All right, let's get started. Hi, thanks to everyone for tuning in. Hopefully we get some more people coming in soon. Just to start introducing myself, my name is Brad Lafortune. I'm a physiotherapist and the owner here at Function Physiotherapy in Ottawa. We're a physiotherapy clinic located at 1185 Bank Street, just in Old Ottawa South. I hope everyone's been staying safe and staying healthy during these crazy times that we've been living in. We do, however, have some good news recent that just came in yesterday. Our college has given us the green light to open back up. So as of Monday, June 1st, we'll be opening again to serve returning clients as well as new clients. So if you need physiotherapy, if you know someone who needs some treatment, feel free to send them our way. We'd be more than happy to see them to help them out. We have taken some extra little measures just to keep everyone safe, clients and staff alike. Things like sanitization stations, getting people in rooms so that you're not waiting in the waiting areas longer. Some extra cleaning efforts, contactless payment, sending you your invoices, things like that, just to keep everyone nice and safe. Now to get to what hopefully you're here for, unless you're at the wrong workshop, we're going to be talking about some running today. So this workshop is all about running tips and tricks, technique, whether you're someone who's new to running, someone who's maybe interested in getting started, fantastic, or even if you're an experienced runner, someone who's been doing this for a little while. Hopefully everyone should be able to take a few things away from this, just to refine your technique, get it a little bit safer, just to keep you injury-free so that you can run for a longer period of time. I'm going to be going over progression, some warm-up, what poor technique looks like, what good technique would look like. We'll talk about cool down, shoes, exercises that you could be doing, again, to just kind of up your running that much more. And then there will also be times for some questions, so if you do have any questions, feel free to send them in, to comment them. I'll keep checking this and then hopefully get to answer them if ever you have some. First things first, running. Running itself is a fantastic sport. It's easily accessible, especially when it's beautiful as it is right now outside here in Ottawa. And it's a great way to just get outside and to be healthy, to be active. And contrary to popular belief, a lot of people seem to think that running in the long term is bad for your joints, bad for your body, really wears and tears away at your knees and your ankles and your hips and things like that. But the truth is, if you're running properly and safely, using the right technique and the right progressions and things like that, running is something you could do extremely long term. It's a very safe and healthy sport. It makes your bones stronger, it gets your cartilage more resistant, has tons of health benefits if it's done safely. Unfortunately, a lot of people, when they start running for the first times, they'll go 0 to 60 real quick. They'll go couch to 5K in one day, is what I like to say. And then they'll hurt and they'll just give up, right? They'll be in pain for a week afterwards, or they'll get a bigger injury, and then they'll just give up. So the first thing, the most important part, if there's anything that can take away from this, especially if you're new and just starting out your running, the biggest thing is progression. Slowly progressing how much you're running. And when we're talking about progression, we can break that up into two different parts. There's frequency, which is how many times in a week we're running. And then there's also intensity, which can be, we're looking at the speed at which we're running, and also how much running we're actually doing, or how long. So if we're doing a run-walk combination, did we get into that running too quickly? Did we go, like we talked about earlier, from couch to 5K in a day? That's a really sudden increase in frequency or intensity. And those two things, those sudden changes and increases, account for 80% of injuries that happen with running. So 80%, a massive, massive amount of running injuries come from a sudden increase in progression, whether that's intensity or frequency. So if you just watch out for those two things and you do those safely, then you should, unless you're that other 20%, in which case we'll talk about technique, which accounts for those, then you should be injury-free, and running should not be a painful sport or painful activity for you. By slowly progressing and increasing our frequency and our intensity, we're giving our body the chance to adapt. We're giving our bones, our cartilage, our joints, our muscles the ability to adapt and to absorb the stress that's being given to it so that it can improve and get stronger and more resilient, and then we grow from that. If we go way too quickly, the body doesn't have the chance to adapt, and that's where injury happens. So biggest thing, number one, 80% of injuries is from a sudden increase in frequency or intensity, so that's speed or distance. So if you're new to running, or if you've been running, 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, and suddenly you're going for 15, 20, or a half marathon, you've got to slowly progress into that. Now there's a million different progression programs that you can find online. They're all pretty similar, all are relatively fantastic. The ones I typically tend to recommend come from the Running Clinic. You can check their website out at www.therunningclinic.com. I'll be posting that on my Facebook page as well. So if you're interested in finding a progression for you, they have it all lined up, whether you're new to running, have been running, took some time off, you're an experienced runner, are you looking to do 5K, 10K, half marathon, are you looking to do your full marathon because you have something wrong with you and that's something you want to do. You can find the progression that's right for you and then just follow those. Sometimes, especially for new beginners, those can feel really long because it'll say, run for 2 minutes and then walk for a minute, run for 2 minutes and walk for a minute. And for some people that'll feel like not a lot of work, or it'll feel like it's not doing much. Trust the science behind it, let it do its work, let your body adapt. The last thing you want to do is hurt yourself and then be out of running for a month, or be in my clinic getting treatment, so that hopefully you can get back to running soon enough. Progression, number one. So now that we have our progression all set up, we know what we're going to be doing, we know what we're going to be following, we're about to go for a run, the first thing we need to do is warm up. So the purpose of the warm-up is just to get blood flowing, get your muscles and your joints ready to flow through that running movement. Now when it comes to the warm-up, what we don't want to do are what we call static stretches. So you don't want to do a stretch where you're holding a position. So a static stretch, for example, for the quad would be this guy. So sometimes I'll see people doing this before they go out for their run. This is a static stretch. We're holding the position. You don't want to be doing those before your run. We're going to save those for the cool down. Before your run, you want to be doing an active style of stretch. So we call those dynamic stretches, where you're going to be using the muscle through its range just to get it flowing, get it ready. By doing a static stretch, you're stretching that muscle out and you're actually making it a little bit weaker for a period of time. So if you're going from a static stretch right into your running, you may be increasing, some studies are saying, increasing your odds of injuring yourself. So before your run, no static stretching, do not hold a position. Here's what you're going to do. These are my go-to dynamic stretches. First one you're going to do are your butt kicks. So you're going to bring your heels up to your butt. You're just going to switch between the two. You're just kicking your butt. Do that for 30 seconds, something like that. Just get it nice and warmed up. Got to warm up your quads. Now let's warm up the hamstrings a little bit. So what you're going to do, I call these high kicks or zombie walks. You're just going to kick that leg forward, kick the other one forward. You don't need to go high. You're just kicking forward, using those hamstrings in that range. Just like that. Again, do that for about 30 seconds before your run. Last one I like to do, just to get the calves a little warmed up, I just call them calf jumps. Essentially, you're just going to be jumping up and down using your calves just to get through that motion, get your calves all heated up, warmed up, ready for the run. Okay? So you're doing each of those for maybe 30 seconds, get those muscles going, you're not holding a static stretch, and then the last thing I want you to do before you get into your run is I want you to go for a walk. Take a quick speed walk. Walk for a good 2 minutes at least. You can make that go up to 5 minutes, 10 minutes, especially if it's really hot out and you want to get used to the climate, or it's really cold out and you also want to get your lungs used to the cold. Take your time, go for a walk, get that blood flowing. When you feel like you're ready, head into your run while following the progression that you're using, okay? So warm up, we're doing our dynamic stretches, we're doing our walk, and then now we're getting into the running. So let's talk about running. Do we have any questions so far? I'm not getting anything. Hopefully that means a good thing and we're all on the same page here. Fantastic. Now we're gonna go into the running now. And the first thing I'm gonna touch on is poor running technique. So this is what not to do while running, okay? And a lot of this may seem straightforward to some people, and for some people, this is also the time where I'll explain this or I'll demonstrate it in a sec, and they're gonna say, oh, that's exactly what I'm doing. And so this is the time to kind of clue into what we shouldn't do. If we are doing it, okay, let's wipe it out, and then we'll head to the proper technique after this. Poor technique, I can sum up in one kind of overarching theme, which is long strides. If you're taking really long strides, which is typically what we instinctively feel like we should do, is that we should be taking these long strides if we want to go further, we want to go faster. We really want to get to our destination in as few steps as possible, because every step means more energy, right? But that's wrong. So those long strides have so many different impacts on our running that make it more costly, more dangerous, more stressful on the body. Because what will happen is that as we're taking these longer strides, we're landing on our heel. So you're landing right on the heel of your foot. And that creates a ton of impact that's going to go through your leg, through your knee, your ankle, your hip, all the way into your back. Every time that you do that and you land on your heel, about 6 times your body weight shocks through your leg. That's quite a bit of weight. Even if you're a tiny person, that'll really build up over some time. So 6 times your body weight if you're landing on a heel. The other thing that'll happen is as we're taking those longer strides, we need to go further. What we call our vertical displacement, which is how much you're moving up and down, will also increase because we're going to be going that way. Again, the higher we go up, the further we have to fall, increases that impact even more. So what not to do is long strides. It seems odd to say that when we're running, we want to take small, quick steps, but I promise you it's going to change the way that you're running if you're not already doing this. So that high impact we're going to want to get rid of. Another thing that happens with those long strides is actually the opposite of what we're thinking. So I was saying a lot of people are thinking that as we take these longer strides, we're taking less steps, therefore using less energy. But that's not the case. As we're taking those long strides, we're using our muscles in a far greater range. And what that does is that it's actually using more oxygen. It's using more energy to get our muscles going through that whole thing. Because if I'm all the way up here when I land, I need to take my body from back here to on top of my leg, and then also throw myself forward so that my other foot can land as far as I can. That's using a lot of energy. Our hamstrings are going all the way out here, having to coil all the way back up. That uses a ton of oxygen. It also puts the muscle in a spot where it's more vulnerable. So when we're going all the way out there, that little bit here, when our foot is all the way out here and we're using our hamstring to pull ourselves over it, uses a ton of energy, but also puts the muscle in a stressful position. So that's where a lot of muscle strain injuries can start to happen. Repetitive strain because we're using those muscles in not an optimal way. All right? Poor technique, to sum it up, is just running with long strides. So if you're running with long strides, you're thinking, I gotta go further, I gotta go, fewer steps to get to where I'm going. That's not what you wanna do. I'm gonna show what wrong or improper, poor technique looks like. Hopefully this isn't too loud. Again, if you've got questions along the way, feel free to send them in. Looks like everything's good. So, with poor technique, this is what we don't want to be doing. Hopefully you can see the theme here. Focus on where I'm landing with my feet on the treadmill. So this is what poor technique would look like. I'm going to take really long strides. My feet are landing way in front of me. I'm landing on my heel. My steps right now are really slow. Taking these long strides, landing on my heel. This is what running should not look like. I can't see it right now. I'm kind of cut off. But my vertical displacement, the amount of up and down that I'm doing, is also pretty high. So that's what you want to avoid. Another test for the ladies out there, or the guys with longer hair. If you got your ponytail in, I call it the ponytail test. If you got your ponytail in and it's going like this, it's going crazy behind you, that means your vertical displacement is probably pretty high. So you gotta shorten those steps up. Any questions so far? Excellent. So, poor technique. What not to do, that, all right? Now let's get into proper technique. When we're talking about proper technique, we're gonna break it down into A, B, C, and we're gonna start with A. We're gonna talk about arms. A lot of people wonder, what should my arms be doing while I'm running, okay? So your arms should be resting by your side, bent at the elbow, loose fists. That's kind of not the important part. The important part is this. What I don't want is your arms crossing in front of you or too much forward movement, okay? You're not slicing the air. You're not gonna get there any faster doing that. It's not creating a huge difference, okay? So what you're doing is keeping your arms at your side and you're focusing on the pull back. So I'm bringing my left arm here, I'm bringing it back and then relaxing. And then on the other side, I'm gonna pull my right elbow back, relax, back, relax, back, relax, back, relax, back, relax. And that'll alternate between. So you're just focusing almost as if there's a target behind your elbow on the side that's pulling back, and you're hitting that target, and then you're hitting opposite one, pull, 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 pull. So really my arms aren't going in front of my midline. They're not going in front of my body at all. I'm focusing on the backwards motion. What that does is, as we're pulling that arm back, we're activating something called the cross chain, the posterior cross chain of our body. So we're using this back muscle here. It's going all the way down here, and it's going to activate the glute on the opposite side, because as we're running, that's what we're doing. We're taking that step back that way. That's going to play a really big role in running. We're going to talk about the importance of glutes later on when we talk about exercises, but the glutes are key to running. So if you're doing this, it'll help activate your glutes a little bit more. And for 95% of runners out there, getting your glutes firing a little bit more is gonna, again, change the way you're running. It's gonna make it feel easier, you're gonna be able to go longer, go faster. It's gonna be great. So A, arms, pulling those guys just back like that. B, we're gonna talk about two things, so it's A, B, B, C. First B is body. Your body should be just in a slight forward incline, nothing crazy, you're not sprinting like this, but what I don't wanna see really is chest out, leaning back, looking like the wind's about to blow you off your feet. So you're just slightly forward incline. Again, arms just doing that little pull back, 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 back. The other B is breathing. So when you're breathing and you're running, you want to be using your diaphragm, massive breathing muscle right at the base of the ribs. Used for breathing, that's its responsibility. You want to be breathing from your diaphragm, really nice and deep here. What you want to avoid is breathing too much from your ribs, so not too much rib breathing, but most of all, we get into something called apical breathing. We're breathing from the top of our shoulders. So what that'll look like is sometimes as we get running, especially if we're really kind of trying to suck for oxygen, which will happen from either not progressing slowly or from having that improper technique, again, those long strides where we're using more oxygen, we're gonna start breathing from our shoulders. Your shoulders will start to creep up here, and we'll breathe in from the top of our shoulders, which is not very effective. One, it'll create a lot of tension through the top of those shoulders there. You don't want tension through there. Probably the number one spot that I see tension for. And the other thing that's gonna happen is that if you're using this to breathe, you're only filling the top of your lungs. A really small percentage of your lungs are at the top. The base of your lungs are the wider part, so pull in through that diaphragm when you're breathing, and you're gonna get way more oxygen in there. Your muscles are gonna feel way better, use your energy better. Huge key. So we got A, our arms kicking back, B, body in forward incline just ever so slightly, and you're breathing from your diaphragm, nice and deep. Now here's the other takeaway, it's the C and it's cadence. So the two takeaways, we got a progression, great, we're following that. Now when we're adjusting our running technique to be as best as possible, cadence is going to be the key to this. Cadence means how many steps we're taking in 1 minute. So every minute, how many steps are we taking? If we're taking those long strides, we're not taking very many steps in a minute. We're probably at around 140, 150, something like that. The key to having one of the best running techniques you can find is having a cadence of about 180 steps per minute. And that's give or take 10. So a lot of people say start by shooting for 170 steps per minute. If that's feeling good and you can up it to 180, fantastic. Some people will naturally want to go all the way up to 190, great. That's your running pace. but it should be somewhere in that range, 170 to 190 steps per minute. Now that might sound a little bit confusing, so we'll talk about that a little bit more. When you're taking that higher step count, you're taking your steps a little bit faster, it'll change a lot of things about your run. So instead of going through those long strides, you're going to be taking smaller, quicker steps. You're going to be landing on the mid of your foot, kind of almost flat-footed. So that decreases the impact that's going to be going through your leg by about half. So instead of 6 times your body weight, it's 3 times your body weight, which is something your leg can handle. And that your leg will be able to adapt to. Your body, your joints, your muscles are going to be able to adapt to that. So instead of landing all the way out here, you're going to be landing right here, almost right over your body as you're moving on top of it. So that's way less impact. On top of that, you're going to have less of that vertical displacement because you're not throwing yourself onto your other leg. That'll also decrease the amount of impact that you're putting through your leg, so that contributes to that halving of the impact amount that you're putting through there. The other thing it's going to do, your strides are going to be shorter, obviously, so your muscles are working in their optimal range. They're working where they're their strongest, where they're the thickest, they're the safest. They have the ability to take on a ton of work and of stress. So if you're taking that short stride, you're using your muscles where they're best. You're not putting them in a range where it's a little risky, it's a little dicey, they're going to start to get strained or start to get a little ticked off with you. You're using them in a really effective range, which means also that they'll be using less oxygen. They'll be using less energy, so you'll be able to run longer, faster, better if you're using these small strides, okay? So you're using less oxygen, your muscles are safer, less impact, you're landing on the middle of your foot. These are all things that all cadence, changing that cadence to 170 to 190 will change automatically. It's one of the quickest changes to make to your running technique to really get an amazing outcome from it, all right? The way that I like to adapt this or to try to modify this for people, because it can be a little bit tricky, it's almost like a new habit that you're gonna have to build with your running, is I use a metronome. So I run with my phone and I have a metronome. I use a Metro Timer, just a free app, free metronome app. This is not sponsored by them. I set it to about 175, something like that. And for the first few minutes of my run, I'm gonna listen to it. And yeah, it's gonna get a little annoying sometimes, but it's gonna go in my ear and it's gonna go beep, 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 beep. And it's gonna tell me, every time I hear that beep, I should be making another step. If I'm starting to get behind, okay, my strides are going a little bit too long, let's speed it up a little bit, let's quicken those steps, all right? So I'll only listen to it for the first couple minutes. Some people may do it for their whole run. I'll listen to it for the first few minutes. If I'm going for something a little bit longer, maybe I'll throw it back in part way, or after a little break, throw it back on to see, okay, am I still staying adjusted to my higher cadence, or have I slipped back a little bit to my 150, 160 longer strides, all right? So you can throw it in here and there. Eventually, it'll become a habit. You'll get used to running at that 170, 180, 190 kind of cadence. Start nice and easy. Start at 170. If that's feeling good, try boosting up to 175. If that's good, great, you're set. You're probably using a fantastic cadence. If you feel, wow, this is really fast, it's because it is. It's a lot faster than what a lot of people naturally will want to run at, all right? So cadence, second biggest takeaway from this, other than following the right progressions, if you're new to running, keeping your cadence nice and quick, 170 to 190 steps per minute. There's also some really cool playlists. I know they are on Spotify, maybe Apple Music, maybe you can download some, that'll be songs at beats of 170 or 180 or 190 beats per minute. So if you're musically inclined, if you don't have rhythm, it may not work as well for you, but if you are musically inclined, you can find those playlists. It'll just be songs that'll keep you running at that beat. They're pretty high energy, so that can be a nice technique if the metronome is starting to drive you a little bit crazy in your ear. All right, so I'm gonna demonstrate what that proper running technique looks like. So I'm gonna use higher cadence, gonna be running a little bit faster. I'm gonna be landing on the middle of my foot, on the faster strides, so I won't be landing on my heel. So try to focus on where I'm landing on my foot. And I'll also be doing some arm movement here. The vertical displacement will be decreased, but my arm movements, like we talked about earlier, I'm just going to kick back, 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 back. So let's see what that proper running technique will look like. Sometimes increasing your cadence will mean that you'll be running a little bit faster, and that's okay. It'll still be safe if you're using the right technique. On the head of the spot I'm talking right now. So if I'm using proper cadence, I'm landing middle of my foot. Some people might even end up a little bit forward-footed, more into the front of your feet. That's okay. But what you're not doing is you're not landing on the back of your foot on your heel. My arms are kicking back. And my vertical displacement is down. All that just by increasing my cadence. Because if I slow it down, I'm landing on the back of my heel. This is core technique. Increasing my cadence. Landing it. And that's some proper technique. Okay, we have a couple questions. Awesome. So one of the first questions is, if you're running at a higher cadence, are you running harder? And depends how you're defining harder. Are you taking more steps? Of course. You're taking more steps. Are you using more energy? No. You're actually going to be using less energy because you're using your muscles in that optimal range where they're more efficient and just better suited for that type of activity. So it'll feel maybe at first like, wow, I'm taking twice as many steps as I was before, but you're not using more oxygen. You're going to be more effective in your running. Another question from Olivier. What do you think about compression socks? Are they worth it? Compression socks, it's hit and miss. I find some people really like them, they live by them. If you do have blood pressure issues or issues with swelling, great. It can also, muscles have this thing where if you compress a muscle in a kind of circumferential way all around, it does keep them a little bit down. So if you're the type of person that does have a lot of tension in their calves, compression socks can help to mitigate a little bit of that tension from building while you're running. Compression socks, if you're just going to be running 5-10s, probably not super worth it if that's the question. If you're going to be running longer distances, it may be right for you. Again, if you do have some swelling, if you do have some tension in the calves. However, if you are having some tensions in your calf, you should also check out your technique, because one thing that's going to happen is that as we're increasing that cadence and getting to that 170 to 190 steps per minute, you're keeping your stride a little bit shorter and you're going to be using your glutes a lot more for your running, which is what we want to do. Our glutes are powerhouses. They're strong muscles, they're big, they're effective, they're long-lasting muscles. So that's going to be the ones that we want to use. When we're using that improper technique, we're using our hamstrings, which will lead to calf tension a lot more. We're also using our calves more because we're kind of throwing ourselves forward with that calf push at the end. So if you do find that you're getting a lot of hamstring tension or irritation, or calf tension or irritation, check out your technique. If you increase that cadence, you might find that you're using your glutes a little bit more and you're not getting as much of that. I'll also be going through some exercises in a little bit to get the glutes fired up, because unfortunately glutes for a lot of us are a little bit weaker. We're spending more time sitting, things like that. So our glutes tend to just power down a little bit. So exercises to kind of activate your glutes, get them strengthened just a little bit more, can really also change and help with that if you are getting a lot of tension. But that's kind of the deal with, or my opinion about compression socks. If you use some if anyone watching does use some and finds the opposite, feel free to comment and let me know if you're doing that. Excellent. So that was some proper techniques. Again, just to sum up real quick, we got our A's. We got our A, arms kicking back, 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 back. We got our B, our breathing from our diaphragm, which I was not able to do, hence why I was a little bit winded. Speaking while you're running makes it a little bit tougher. We have our body that's a little bit in that forward incline, and then the biggest one, cadence. Whether you're using a metronome, whether you think you got it yourself, fantastic, get that cadence up. Got another question here from Yutke. Would you recommend if I have pain in my side when running? Is it because of poor breathing? So are we talking, if we're talking like pain through here or stitches, which might come right under the ribs, those types of cramping pains through the abdomen, if that's what we're talking about, yes, those can often be from breathing. It can be that maybe you've eaten or haven't drank enough water too recently before your run, just kind of an exhaustion thing. Could be a progression thing as well. Maybe you're going a little bit too hard, your muscles aren't able to keep up with it, you need to get a little bit more oxygen. It's a way for your body to say, I'm lacking oxygen. If you are getting cramps, you're getting stitches, which will happen even with experienced runners, it does happen. I have two go-to techniques. One is, a lot of people do this, the hand above the head, and just kind of take a little break in the walking. It'll just stretch it out a little bit, get it to calm down some. You can, if it's really bad, go into that recovery position. A recent article did come out saying that it is more effective than the hand above head, but at least this one you can keep moving if you're trying to hit a time or something. But the recovery position is good for just getting that breath to kind of calm down. The other thing, if you have a stitch, let's say I have a stitch right now on this side here. I have my ribs right here. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take a couple fingers, go under your ribs and pull up a little bit. So right now I'm just under my rib. And then what you're gonna do is already this may be a little bit sensitive if you are experiencing a spasm or a stitch. And then you're gonna take deep breaths into your diaphragm. And you're gonna feel that pressure, but it will get that stitch out a little bit faster. It's like kind of working out a muscle knot through a muscle. So that's a really good technique for getting rid of a stitch if you're getting one of those. Hopefully that's what we were talking about. So if you're getting those, try that. Wallace, hey, what about things you need to carry while running? Keys, phone, where do you put them? I tried running with a water bottle today and it was so awkward I had to stop halfway through. What do you recommend? This is the bane of my existence because I hate running with things, but unfortunately sometimes you have to. If you're going to be running longer distances, especially anything really over a 5K, I would recommend some kind of a belt, a little bit of a kind of a runner's belt if you're going to be carrying your phone, which a lot of people like to do for safety or for tracking, if you're using an app like Strava or something like that for tracking your distances, your time. A belt that has kind of a spot for your phone. Sometimes they'll have carrying spots for water bottles. Those can be good too. There are water bottles that do strap to your hand directly so that you don't have to be squeezing it, because that can be a little bit kind of annoying or distracting as well sometimes. So you can throw that out, put your key in that. If you're gonna be doing longer distances, that might be your best bet. If you just want something to put your stuff in. I find a belt works best as opposed to having things in your pocket. I typically wouldn't recommend having too much stuff in your pocket. It can, move around, it can distract you, it can actually change your pacing, your cadence a little bit, make you kind of, my key's starting to come forward, so I'm gonna do this running out thing to try to kind of move it away. So if you find that you're getting that, just find yourself a belt, find somewhere to hide your key, I don't know, whatever you can do, but a belt is probably what I would recommend for that. Denise, how should your heart be pumping? Does it depend on my age? Yes. Heart rate will fluctuate a lot. It'll fluctuate a lot on what you're trying to do. There's a whole theory about keeping your heart rate relatively low. There's heart rate training for runners. But ideally, you don't want to be hitting your max heart rate. So your max heart rate, I'm trying to remember now, is 220 minus your age. So if you take your age, subtract it from 220, so let's say you're 4 years old, 220 minus 40, 180, hopefully that's right. That's your max heart rate. You do not ever want to be hitting that. You should be a good, I'd say at least 20 under that. 160 is kind of high on the heart rate while you're running, 140, 150. It'll really, really depend. Biggest thing, it should be improving. If you're running over a longer period of time, that heart rate should kind of start to improve. If you find it's not, again, a progression might be the issue. if you find that your heart is just really high, you're beating, you're getting those stitches, your muscles are sore, that's all saying that your body isn't ready for that type of stress or that type of load just yet. So go through that progression slowly. Let your heart adapt, your lungs adapt, your muscles adapt. It can be any one of those things that just needs a little bit more time. So some people, if they find that they're just hitting a wall or hitting a barrier, you'll kick back your running a little bit, so you'll run for a little bit of a shorter distance or not as fast, not as long, and keep your heart rate nice and low as much as you can. So if that's something that you want to try out, great. But that max heart rate, really never want to go past that. Even 20 under, I'd say, is kind of a good spot to be. I think that's all the questions we have for now. If there's more, feel free to send them in. I'm trying to kind of keep up with that. So we talked about proper technique. Now after your run, this is where we're going to get into the cool down. First thing you're going to do, walk. Walk for a little bit after your run. Don't go right into sitting. You're going to stiffen up. Your muscles are going to get real angry with you. So just walk. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever feels good. Just get the blood flowing out of your muscles through that kind of gentle, let your heart rate come back down, walk, okay? Now after our run, we started with the warm up with those dynamic stretches, stretching while moving. After the run is when we're gonna get into those static stretches. So you're gonna be holding positions. These are my go-to stretches that I like to recommend. The first one is gonna be for the quad. You're gonna do just that quad stretch. Just holding it back there. Bring your foot up behind you, hold on to it. A static stretch should last about 30 seconds is what I tend to recommend. Holding it 30 seconds. If ever you're really cramping up or it's really starting to bug you, take a break. If you don't make it to 30 in one shot, that's fine. Take a break, head back into it. So if I stopped at 15, I'll head back here, 16, 17, 18, total of 30 seconds. Or whatever feels good. Some people really like that stretch. Some people find one side is tighter than the other. They want to give that one a little bit more. Great, go for it. So we got our quad stretched out. The other one I want to do is our calf. So this is just that runner's stretch. You're going to put one foot behind you. You're just going to lean forward a little bit. Keep that heel. So I'm stretching this back leg here, my left leg. Keep that heel down there and just lean forward. You can lean against a wall if you want to. You're just getting that little stretch down there. Again, holding it total 30 seconds or whatever feels good for you. Doing both sides is always a good idea as well. And for stretching, it doesn't need to be painful. A stretch doesn't need to be painful or massive or super intense for it to be effective. As long as you're getting some type of pulling, stretching sensation, great, you're good. As soon as you start feeling that little bit of resistance, you're officially stretching your muscle. You don't need to overdo it. You don't need to be super far lunged forward to get that calf stretched or anything like that. So we got our quad stretch, we got our calf stretch. The last one I really want to do is a hamstring stretch. Okay. Hamstring stretch, there's a bunch of different ways. This one's typically the easiest one. Get yourself a surface. It doesn't need to be high. You're going to bring your foot, your heel up on top of that surface, and you're just going to rest it there. It doesn't need to be high because for most people, this is efficient. This should be enough for you to feel a little bit of a stretch. And you can feel this stretch anywhere in the back of your leg. So some people get it in the meat of the hamstring right there. Some people get it right behind the knee. Others might even feel it down to their calf. The legs behind, or the muscles behind your leg are all connected through fascia. It's called the posterior chain. So hamstrings, calf, whatever is stretching, great. You're getting that stretch as soon as you feel that little bit of resistance. If you find that you're not getting that stretch just yet, I don't want you going even higher just yet. Here's what you're going to try. There's a couple things. One, you can twist your leg inwards. So if you're looking at your foot, you're going to be bringing it towards the inside of your body, and that already should increase the stretch that you feel a little bit. If you're still not getting a good stretch in there, here's the other technique. I don't want you leaning forward, all right? All we're doing at this is I'm just bending my back. I'm not actually getting more of a stretch. I'm just pulling on the fascia. I'm not getting the muscles. What you're gonna do is you're basically gonna take your butt and you're gonna try to arch your back and stick your butt out a little bit more to get just a slightly deeper stretch or a bigger stretch if you weren't feeling it just yet. If you're already feeling it in that normal position, you're set, all right? But put that butt out a little bit and you'll, without a doubt, start feeling that stretch in the hamstring, behind the knee, in the calf, wherever, okay? Total of 30 seconds, switch it up. This, I find, is typically a really good stretch. The hamstring stretch seems to be a really important one for a lot of people, just because it will get that whole posterior chain. It will get whatever is kind of most tight in the posterior chain. So if you only have time for one stretch, you're heading out to a meeting or something like that after your run, this is the one I would recommend. And it's still relatively easy to do, all right? So that's that hamstring stretch. We got our quad stretch and our calf stretch. Those are my 3 recommendations for stretches. If there are others that you enjoy, pigeon, hip flexor stretch, things like that, by all means, go at it. But I just like to keep things pretty effective, pretty efficient, all right? So those are my go-to stretches for your cool down, static stretches during cool down, dynamic stretches during your warm-up, all right? Just gonna make sure here, we're still good. Now let's talk about shoes, which is another big question that I get a lot about. Shoes are going to be really individual. There's going to be preferences for certain people as far as how much support, pronation, supination, brands, things like that, the look of them, colors, whatever it is that works best for you. Cool, go for it. But these are my typical recommendations for most people. One of the big things you want to look for in a shoe is that it's of relatively low incline. So not necessarily a minimalist shoe. Some people are going for those and that's fine, but just relatively low incline. So what you don't want is a shoe that has a really thick heel. A thick heel, thick sole right in the back. That'll put you more into that upward position, which will actually create more tension through your calves, through your hamstring, that posterior chain behind the leg that we were talking about. And it also makes it really hard to run on that flat foot, to land mid-foot. It makes us almost naturally want to hit on the rear of our foot because it's so much thicker that it's the first thing that will come into contact. And sure, it has a lot of cushion, typically when they're really thick, that will absorb some of the impact, but it'll just be hard to get that proper technique going if you have that thick sole. So I'm not looking for a thick sole, I'm looking for something that's relatively streamlined along the bottom. And then here are the 3 tests that I tend to do. This is an example of a bad running shoe, a shoe that is bad for running. No knock on Nike or anything, I still like their shoes, but this is just not a running shoe. So here are my 3 tests. Hopefully you can see these okay. So the first test, what you're gonna do is right on the back of the shoe, I want you to give it a pinch. If you can do this and really pinch that back together, you're probably not looking at a great running shoe, okay? I want there to be a little bit of stability. So this is a bad shoe. This is super flimsy, really easy to move around in the back. Here's my actual running shoe. And if I try to squeeze that back, way more resistance. Got some good sturdy support back there. All right, that's test number 1. I call it the pinch back test. Give that a little pinch, okay? Test number 2. We're back to the bad running shoe, or an example of a bad running shoe. Again, not knocking it or anything. I call this the ring test. If you can take your shoe and wring it like a towel and twist it around, also not a great shoe. This is very, very little support. And when I'm talking support, I'm not necessarily talking about arch support or anything like that. I'm just talking, the shoe doesn't have a lot of structure to it. So it's gonna be really straining on the body and on the impact. So if you can do this to your shoe, probably not a great running shoe. Again, unless this is something specific that you're looking for, go for it. This is my actual running shoe. If I try to ring this one, I can't really get a whole lot of give from it, all right? So we got the ring test, we have the pinch back test, and then the last one here, I call it the fold back test. So back to the bad running shoe, or example of bad running shoe, if I can touch the tip of the shoe to the tongue of the shoe right at the top, basically folding my shoe in half. Again, not a great example of a running shoe, might be a little flimsy for running. Whereas if we head back to my good shoe and I try to give it, again, it's quite a bit more support. I don't want, for all these tests, I don't want anything that's like a brick, but I just want a little bit of resistance. I want it to be tougher to kind of get through that, to pinch, ring, and fold back. All right, so those are my go-to tests for a running shoe. Again, it's super individual. If I have any very experienced runners on here that are saying, you know, I love my minimalist shoe, or I need pronation support, supination support, if that's what you've been told by your physio or by your shoe expert, please, by all means. These are just kind of my go-to recommendations for nice, quick, easy support. Excellent. So we went through shoes. We're gonna go through some exercises now. And these exercises, I touched on it a little bit, are mostly focused on getting that glute activation. The glutes are going to be weak for a large number of people, and that's okay, but 95% of runners that I see, whether you're new, whether you're experienced, you've been doing this for a while, glute weakness does tend to happen. We're all guilty of it, and that's fine. We tend to sit a lot more, we're driving, we're working at desks, things like that. Our glutes naturally get a little stretched out and get a little bit weaker. So these exercises that I give are good for pretty much anyone to do, because getting those glutes a little bit tightened up or a little bit toner, a little bit stronger, is going to benefit anyone who's looking to run. So I got 3 main exercises that I like to give people. Yes. So we got 3 exercises here. The first one I like to do is a bridge, but I like to tweak the bridge a little bit like this. So for the bridge, you're getting down. Hopefully you can still see me here. If the comments are in the way, just swipe them away. So if you're doing your bridge, you're getting comfortable, you're lying in that crook position, your knees are bent, not too far away. I can't necessarily reach them. I don't want to be able to touch my heels. They're a little bit further than that, whatever feels comfortable. Then what you're going to do is you're going to lift the front of your feet. So your toes are raised, only my heels are in contact with the ground. And now I'm going to push my heels down and back. So as if I was trying to bring them this way, into the ground, down towards the floor. So I'm pushing down, and then before I even go up into that bridge, I'm activating my glutes. So you're squeezing your butt together before you go up into your glute bridge, all right? So I'm pushing down, squeeze my glutes, come up. Hold for a second, come back down, and then relax. So through that whole upward motion and downward motion, you're contracting those glutes, you're keeping them together, all right? So push, squeeze, up, down. You're not going for crazy range either. So what you're not doing is arching all the way up here, all right? At that point, you're not using your glutes anymore. You're gonna start using your hamstrings. You're gonna use a lot of your back muscles as well, which is not the point of the bridge. The other reason that I'm having you activate those glutes and having you push your heels down to the ground as a modification to this bridge is that if I just tell someone, okay, bend your knees and go up into a bridge, right now I'm probably using about 80% back muscles and 20% everything else in my legs. Whereas if I'm pushing this and activating those glutes and then going into it, my back feels way more relaxed in this type of position. Try it yourself. Just do one without thinking about it. You'll feel that tension through the erectors of your back. Whereas if you do that pushing and that squeezing, you don't feel that same tension. So this is the glute bridge. 20 to 30 of these. Take some breaks. And this is something that you don't need to be doing all the time. If you're throwing this in to your workout routine a few times a week, fantastic. If you come to me or to see a physiotherapist saying that you're getting some pain on the outside of your knee, you're getting that runner's knee, you were diagnosed by Dr. Google with having runner's knee or IT band issues or anything like that, what you're looking at is 98% of the time I'm going to be giving you some glute strengthening. Getting those glutes strengthened is a huge adjuster to those, as well as, again, we're probably looking at cadence and technique, things like that. All right, so glute exercise number 1, that glute bridge. I have a couple questions here. Melissa, hello. If our glutes are weak because we sit in chairs, will we naturally get stronger through our glutes if we spend more time standing or sitting on the floor? Standing, yes. Sitting on the floor, your glutes are still going to be in that stretched out position. Anytime your hip is bent and not standing straight, your glute is a little bit stretched. And I mean, obviously we're meant to be sitting. I don't want you standing all the time or anything like that. But yes, it's more about how much time we spend sitting in one go. If you're the type of person that sits at a desk for 4 hours straight, not taking any breaks, not standing up at all, not moving a little bit, your glutes are definitely going to be a little bit weaker. Versus someone who, sits at their job, but you know what, every 20-30 minutes they get up, even if it's just to stand up, move a little bit, it breaks up that monotony in that glute position, gets them firing a little bit, and that should be more than enough. So yeah, standing, yes, will help with that a little bit, but that doesn't mean the same way that I want someone to break up their sitting position throughout the day, I want someone to break up their standing position. If you stand for an 8-hour workday, you're not going to feel good. It's going to be just as detrimental to your body and to your posture. We like variety of positions, so it's about switching that up. I'll talk a little bit more about posture in a sec. Thank you for the question. So we're going over exercises. We did our glute bridge. Great exercise, number 1. Number 2 exercise that I like to give is a nice simple one called the bird dog. So bird dog, you're starting on all 4, as long as it's comfortable for you. You can either have your hands flat, you can be on your fists, however is, again, easiest or comfortable for you. I want your spine to be in a relatively neutral position. So you're not arched all the way like this. You're also not arched in that camel position. Go right kind of between the two. And what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that you have a bowl of water or a ball resting on your back right here. And you don't want that ball or that bowl of water to be moving. You don't want to fall off your back as you're going through this movement. For beginners, if this is your first time doing this exercise, you'll start nice and easy. What you're going to do is you're going to bring one arm up, forward, back down. You can do the other arm. So my back isn't moving. I'm trying to keep that ball through there, or that bowl of water sitting on my back. Then you're going to do a leg, extend it. So I'm using my glute here to extend my leg, bring it back down, switching to the other side, bring it back down. That's the starting. If you feel that that's really nice and easy and it's going quite well for you, you're going to progress to extending a leg and an arm at the same time, opposite arm and leg. So you're going to be bringing your left arm, right leg backwards, slowly bring it back. Same thing here. So my back is staying as straight as possible or as level as possible. Here, what I don't want during this exercise is this. At this point, again, I'm using the extensors, the erectors of my back. You're going to get some tension in there. It's not going to feel great. You're no longer using your glutes. You're using your back. So keep that nice and straight. I don't want you to look like you're a dog peeing. You're just kind of going out there, all right? That's the big takeaway for that. Do, again, 20 to 30 cycles of these. Taking some breaks in between, whatever feels best for you. Just going through that motion. All right, so we got our bridge, we got our bird dog. The last one I like to do is the clamshell. Again, big glute activator. You're going to be on your side for this one. Your ankles are touching, and to be in the right position for the clamshell, which is this exercise here, I want there to be a line between my shoulder, my hip, and my ankle. So right now, if I were to kind of have an overhead view, there would be a nice straight line between that. I'm not like this, in which case, shoulder, hip, ankles are out here, and I'm not backwards either. Nice straight line. You're trying to look like a square root sign for this one, all right? And what you're doing is you're keeping your ankles together. You're separating your knee just a little bit. Up, nice and slow down, nice and slow up, nice and controlled. For all these exercises, control your movement. For all exercises in general, don't be too ballistic. You're not, going through anything like that. Go nice and easy up, nice and easy down. This is the starting for this exercise, clamshell. Again, 20 to 30 of these, breaks throughout as needed. 2 to 3 sets of 10, let's say. If it's feeling really easy and you have a resistance band, you can go ahead and basically loop that around right by your knees, above your knees, on the bottom of your thighs essentially, and you'll just have that as a resistance as well. All right, so we got the bridge, the bird dog, and the clamshell, which are my 3 go-to exercises. Yeah, for anyone who's joining a little bit late and who missed some stuff, this broadcast will be available on the timeline of the Facebook page, of Function Physio's Facebook page. So feel free to kind of go back there, check it out once we're done. You'll be able to kind of scroll through it and see what's up. Last thing, as far as exercises, this is especially good if you're going to be doing some trail running, or if you have a history of ankle sprains. What'll happen is that something called proprioception, which is the awareness of our joints, of where they are, tends to get a little bit weaker, or a little bit less ample as we tend to injure our ankles. So if you used to play a lot of volleyball or something like that, or still play a lot of volleyball and you sprain your ankle a lot, this will be a great exercise for you, just to keep your ankle safe. Or like I say, if you're doing some trail running, this will be a good way to make sure that you don't sprain your ankle and end up with too many injuries in that sense. Basically what you're going to be doing is some single leg stuff. You're going to be working on some balance in single leg. You can start very simply just on the floor. You should be able to stand 30 seconds on the floor, eyes open, relatively simple, all right? And this is assuming that you don't have any previous concussions. I know there's a couple people in here that may have some issues with balance or anything like that. Any conditions of the inner ear, this might be a bit more difficult for you, in which case, if you're doing this for the first time, try to have a wall or a chair nearby so that you can ground yourself. But if this, again, is feeling too easy and you're able to stand on that one leg, no problem, what we're gonna do, I'm using a foam here, but realistically a pillow, any type of pillow that you can stand on, just gives you that little bit more of a wobble. Try to keep your arms down, like I'm doing, to keep that balance in there, okay? Total of 30 seconds. Again, if you do end up falling, something like that, then when you start again, if I fell at 15 seconds, now I'm at 16, 17, just hit that total. Again, throw it into your workout, throw it into your regime, whatever you got going, a few times a week if possible, just to keep your ankles nice and strong. They'll thank you if ever you do end up. And it'll happen. When you're running, you'll hit a little bit of a divot in the sidewalk, or you'll hit a rock or something like that. And when that does happen, your proprioceptive muscles of your ankles, the muscles along the side of the ankle that do that kind of wiggling or wobbling motion side to side, will catch it and adjust it so that you don't get to the point where you're pulling on a ligament and get into a sprain. So if that's something that you find is happening a lot to you, throw those in. So again, to cap up those exercises, mostly focusing on getting those glutes activated. So we're looking at that glute bridge, pushing down through the heels, squeezing the glutes. We got our bird dog, keeping that back nice and level. And then we got our clamshell, and then some ankle stability, some single leg stuff. All right, if that's something that you find you have some issues with. Now, that's pretty much what I had planned on talking about. I am going to touch on posture just because someone brought it up a little bit earlier. And it's something that I hear about so often, especially right now. A lot of people are working from home, home offices, home desks, chairs, kitchen tables, couches, sofas, things like that. And don't get me wrong, as much as possible, I do want everyone sitting in a nice straight posture when possible. But the biggest thing, if you put that aside, is break up your position. And this will be good for, especially if you are a runner, to keep those glutes nice and strong and active. Break up your position. So if you're sitting at your desk, even if you're in poor posture, if you get up every 20 minutes, every 30 minutes, even if it just means you're standing up, take a couple of steps, walk around your chair 2 times, sit back down, it's going to do a world of wonder. If you sit in terrible posture for no more than 20 minutes, you won't feel much. If you sit in fantastic, perfect posture for 8 hours, your body's still going to hate you. We're not meant to be in a static position for that long. So just break it up whenever you can. 20, 30 minutes. If you use Outlook, set yourself reminders, put alarms on your phone if you need to, if you're the type of person that just gets so absorbed in their work. Drink a lot of water so that you have to pee frequently throughout the day. Whatever works for you, just break up your position. Break up your position and then I'm not saying that you shouldn't worry about your posture or have a good chair or anything like that. Like, don't necessarily work from the couch if you don't have to, or you can. But breaking it up is going to be way more important than getting that perfect posture. All right. So that's one of my big takeaways from that. If there's any questions, feel free to send them in. I'll give you guys a minute for that in case there is. But just to reiterate what I was talking about at the beginning of the broadcast is that we have been given the green light to open back up as of Monday. That's June 1st. So we're going to be back to seeing clients in our clinic. We're so happy about it. We have taken some extra precautions and measures, obviously, to keep our staff as well as our clients safe. Some extra equipment, some cleaning, some sanitization. We got Purell, contactless payment, all that kind of stuff, just to keep everyone healthy and happy, but still be able to provide the treatments that we love to give as far as hands-on approaches. So if you need physiotherapy, if you know someone who needs physiotherapy, feel free to send them our way. We'd be more than happy to help you out. Yeah, so I'm just gonna have a look if there's any last questions. Anything to do with running whatsoever, or physiotherapy in general, feel free to send them in. Otherwise, I do want to thank everyone who tuned in, seeing some familiar faces, so thank you to all those people for tuning in. Hey to you guys, Wallace, Lena, Olivier, thanks you guys, it's really nice. So hopefully this was informative. If ever you have some questions along the way, feel free to send them in. You can reach me on Facebook, you can email us, you can go to our website, fxnphysio.com, and send them in that way. We're always here for you. So thank you guys for tuning in, and have a great day. Stay safe.